Welcome back to Real Estate 101. Today we're going to continue our discussion on family law and talk a little bit about separation, and I'm pleased to be joined once again by John Schuman of Devery Smith Frank LLP. John, welcome back to the show.
It's good to be back again.
All right, John, so I want to start today's show. I want to ask you, what is the first step or first thing someone should do when they're thinking about separation?
That's a really important question, because the first things you do when you separate set the tone for probably the rest of your life. It can determine how you're going to have a relationship with your former spouse for the rest of your life, whether you have a relationship with your kids, whether you end up bankrupt, how much money you end up paying. So what you do first is very, very important. And one of the things that really impacts on what you do with the rest of your life is what path you choose and how you separate from your spouse. Whether you're able to negotiate things out on your own, or whether you do one of the alternatives to court, because not everyone has to go to court anymore. You can work things out using a mediator or a collaborative practice, or perhaps you need to go to arbitration, or having someone just help you work out the issues between you. And all of that is much easier than in court and may save some sort of relationship with your spouse. Maybe you don't want to have a good relationship with them, but at least if you're parents of a kid, you can you're civil and you can still keep parenting together. And you also avoid making any big mistakes, because there's a lot of things people do right at the beginning that they don't know what they're doing, so they really prejudice their rights, either prejudice their whole court case if you go to court, or what they can get out of at the end of the day. So one of the things you really need to do is talk to before you separate, or as soon as you separate, you should speak to a good family law lawyer to get a lay of the land, know what your options are, know what you should do and what you shouldn't do.
Okay, so does it make a difference which lawyer they see?
It actually makes quite a big difference of what type of lawyer you see. You really want to, when you're separating, see someone who specializes in family law and who does only family law, because family law is a very unique area of law and it operates different from other areas of law. So go see a family lawyer. There are also certified specialists, and certified specialists are more senior members of the family law bar who have been recognized by the Law Society of having special knowledge and skill in the area of family law. When you go to see a family law lawyer, you don't necessarily want to pick the one who gives you the free initial consult, because what happens in a 30-minute consultation is you get to tell your story for a little bit, and then the family lawyer gets to tell you how you retain them. So you don't get much advice in 30 minutes, so a 30-minute free consultation is not something you really need to look for. What you want to look for is a lawyer who's going to sit down, spend some time with you, give you good advice, listen to what you have to say, and come up with a plan for you moving forward. Because good lawyers can come up with a plan. Even at the first meeting, they can see where things are going from the story you've told them, and they can tell you where you want to go. So it's worth your while to spend some money, get a good consult with a good lawyer who will set down a good path for you to follow as you go through a difficult time in your life.
And how much does a normal good lawyer consultation cost on average?
Well, it really varies depending on the lawyer. Some lawyers charge about $100 for a consult, some charge $700 or $800 for a consult. Depends on how senior the lawyer is. And you do get what you pay for when you
of course.
Because the reason lawyers get $700 an hour
is because they're good at their job, yeah.
Because they're very good at their job and they can deal with complicated matters. And even if you want to go to a consult with a good lawyer who is very expensive, chances are he has some other lawyers who can, if he says, I'm too expensive for you, you don't need my skill for your issue because it's not quite as complicated as you think, he can maybe refer you to another lawyer in his office who can give you, who charges less and still is very good at their job.
All right, John, so how do you pick a good lawyer?
Well, there's two important aspects of that. One, you want someone who is a good lawyer and knows what they're doing, which I just sort of talked about. The second is you want someone who's a good fit for you. Often you'll see people who advertise, we will fight for your rights. And you have to think to yourself before you go to a we will fight for your rights type lawyer, whether you want to have a fight for your rights, whether you want to have that big fight through court for a long period of time.
You may not need it.
You may not need it, or you may not want to have that sort of fight with your spouse. You may want to work things out more easily and with less stress for your kids. So you may want to look at other options rather than a fight for your rights lawyer if you want to get things done. And if you want to get things done, I always recommend to people who come to see me that they check out the collaborative practice websites. Now, you may not want to do collaborative practice, But collaborative practice lawyers, they've all had some additional training to do collaborative practice. They're all focused on getting the job done and getting you to where you want to go, as opposed to focusing on the fight. So if you want to get things done, then that's a good place to start. But before you go to any lawyer, do your research, find out what kind of person they are, and whether they're a type of person who's going to steer you to a fight you don't want, or try to get you to settle on a settlement you don't want. You have to find the lawyer and the process that works best for you.
All right, John, so let's say one of our viewers, they've contacted a lawyer. Are there things that they should do first when they're contemplating separation?
Well, there are some things they can get together that will help make the process go more quickly. The first is, when you're going to separate, you're going to need 3 years of tax returns. So if you have your 3 years of tax returns around, bringing them to when you first meet with a lawyer will only help get things going quicker. You're also going to need your bank records and your debt records and all the, sort of your financial situation, all the documentation to your financial situation. So getting those together helps. If you know where your spouse keeps their records and you can make copies of them, then that helps as well. If you can go make copies of their records. Don't steal their records, don't hide their records, don't destroy their records, because all those things are illegal, and if you get caught, you'll be off on the wrong foot. Something else you might want to think about is if you're having difficulty with the emotional side of the divorce, as opposed to, like, lawyers do the legal side, but if it's the emotions that really have you upset, and then you want to speak to someone about that. So you want to find a counselor or divorce coach to help you with that, because lawyers aren't good at helping with the emotional side, but those people are. And finally, if this is you having a sort of a big blow up at the end of your relationship, if there's violence in your relationship, then you have to consider a safety plan. And if you need to, there's people who can help you with a safety plan. There's counselors can help you with that. But if you don't have someone your local police can help you with a safety plan before you separate, and make sure you stay safe.
All right, so are there things that people shouldn't do?
Yeah, there's several things people shouldn't do that can get them into real trouble when they separate. The first is, don't leave the house until you've spoken to a lawyer, unless there's some safety concerns. Especially if you have kids, don't leave the house. Because if you leave the house with the kids, you can be kidnapping. If you leave the house without the kid, you can be giving up custody of the kids. So don't leave the house until you've spoken to a lawyer.
And let's say somebody does leave the house, would that be considered like abandonment?
Not really abandonment, but it is if you leave the kids behind, it can really impact on the custody battle, because the person who stays behind has what's called de facto custody of the kids, because the kids are with them and they're looking after them day to day. So having kids, best to stay in the house, unless there's safety issues. And if there are real safety issues, then you should get out of the house. And if you are concerned about yours and your children's safety, then you do have to leave the house. And that you don't stay in the house in a violent situation, but you have to realize that you're going to be questioned about whether or not it was reasonable for you to leave the house. So make sure you are legitimately have safety concerns, and if you do, then get out. Some other things that you need to think about or you don't want to do when you separate is you don't want to start recording conversations that you're not a party to, because if you leave bugs around the house or tape recorders going around the house, that's a violation of Section 184 of the Criminal Code. It's against the law. You can be criminally charged for it. So don't do that. Don't steal things from your spouse. Their valuables. Don't destroy their valuables. Again, against the Criminal Code, that gets things off the wrong foot. And also, you really don't want to start trying to hide your own assets, because if you start hiding your own assets and you get caught, then you'll look dishonest, and your spouse will go to court and lose your credibility. Your spouse will go to court, and you'll be off going to court whether you want to or not, and in trouble with the judge right from the beginning. So don't go off hiding things. And also, when you're separating from your spouse, you got to think about how you're going to separate from them. And if you're going to do it in a big fight with a big blow up, then that's going to really impact how things go down the road. If you sit down and have a more calm conversation with them, then that may lead to things working out more calmly long term, which is what most people want.
All right, so is there anyone else you should speak to besides a lawyer?
Well, I spoke already about going to see like a divorce coach or a counselor. That's an important one to help you with the emotional side. Another person you may want to speak to is if you've got complicated financial issues, you may want to speak to an accountant, or if you have an accountant already, speak to your accountant about how to organize things. and how to get all the documents you need.
Or your financial planner.
That's right, financial planner as well. Good time to speak to your financial planner is probably before you separate, if you don't have the same financial planner as your spouse, because they can help you organize things, especially in conjunction with your lawyer, to make sure you don't have things where you don't want them to be when you separate. Where assets are can make an effect on property division, so best to leave things where they are until you speak to someone about it. And lastly, if you have kids and you're going to separate, or maybe right after you separate, it's a good thing to tell the kids' teachers and the other professionals they're involved with, so that the teachers know that your kids are going through a hard time, and maybe their swim coach or their other hockey parents, so that when they see that your child's a little bit upset, they know why, and perhaps they can offer some additional support. And if they need additional support, then maybe you want to speak to a child therapist as well, because it's a difficult time for kids and you can make it a lot easier for them doing the right things.
All right, so how do you approach telling your spouse that you want to separate?
This depends a lot on who your spouse is and what kind of relationship you have with them and how things have been going on lately. A good thing to do is, I'm not an expert as a lawyer on emotional sides and how to talk to people, so that's another good time to speak to another professional, like again a therapist or a divorce coach. But before you have the conversation, you really want to think about it and plan it out, because if you do have that big fight, you start things off with a big fight, you may be in for a long-term big fight. But if you can have it set off so that you have a nice calm conversation about it, things may work out more calmly in the end. And if you have a big fight, they're expensive, you can use all your money in the fight, whereas if you're able to have a discussion about it, you save yourself a lot of lawyer's fees and yourself a lot of stress as well.
All right, John, so for today's final question, do you have any last tips for anyone that is about to begin the separation process?
Well, in your separation, you're separating from someone, your separation is different from everyone else's separation, and your family is different from everyone else's family. So it's difficult to generalize, and little facts in family law can make a big difference. So one of the biggest tip I can give to you is go see a good family lawyer right at the beginning, either before you separate or right after you separate, and that family lawyer will be able to tell you where you stand in terms of the kids, in terms of the finances, in terms of everything else, whether you should leave, whether you should stay. That family lawyer will also be able to tell you what all your options are, how to work things out, which plan is the best for you, because there's a number of ways you can go when you separate, and a good lawyer will be able to tell you which path is the best for you. And a good lawyer also has good connections to other professionals who can help you. So if you've got complex financial issues, then the lawyer will be able to refer you to an accountant or other financial professional to help you work through the financial issues, and to good, a counselor or other person who can help you with the emotional side, because we see each other a lot, counselors and accountants and family lawyers. So a good family lawyer will get you to all the professionals you need and get you on the right path and tell you where you're going to go, and maybe even be able to tell you where you're going to end up at the end. And that's how you know if you've got a good person working for you, because they can tell you where you should be going and how you're going to get there.
All right, John, great stuff. Thanks for coming on today's show, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again sometime in the new year.
I'm looking forward to it too.
So there you have it. If you're about to start the separation process and need the help of a top family lawyer, get in contact with John Schuman of Devery Smith Frank LLP. I'm your host, Joe Tercera. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.